Welcome to the Educate on Purpose podcast. My name is Brandon House, and I'm here to help you lead with purpose and grow and become a better, more effective instructional school leader. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. We have a great episode for you today. But before we jump into the episode, I just wanted to say, you know what? It's been a difficult school year this year. As we ease our way out of the pandemic, we still are getting ready for another really stressful situation in the school year. So if you're watching this episode or listening to this podcast at the time of its release, you know that it is just about to be testing season. And testing season for school leaders, for all educators, is extremely stressful. And I know that there are a lot of things out there that could be distracting and a lot to manage during this time as you are getting prepared for the testing season. So, just for you taking the time right now to listen to me, watch me on this podcast, I just wanted to say thank you by giving you a few gifts. So I have 2 gifts that you'll probably see either in the show notes or at the description on the bottom of the YouTube site. I just wanted to say thank you by giving you 2 gifts. The first gift is, not only is it testing season, but you're probably trying to hire new teachers for the upcoming school year. And so some of you who are new school leaders may not have a bank of interview questions. Well, I'm giving you my own personal bank of interview questions that I feel that are really in depth, that have helped me hire great teachers for my entire school leadership career. And so I'm taking every single question and I am putting it into a PDF format for you just to download. You don't have to do anything to it. You can ask those questions just to the teachers that you're interviewing. It's so easy. There's even going to be a rubric that's included with that to just kind of help you think about how you want to evaluate your potential candidates for your teachers. So that gift will be linked up in the show notes, or you can head over to brandonghouse.com/EOP interview and you can download those questions. The second gift, this is really exciting. The second gift is something that is coming up. I have a fantastic masterclass for all of you school leaders that I just wanted to share because this is something that I have learned throughout my entire school leadership career that I think has been extremely valuable. And I want to share it with you. And it's really a framework for thinking about how to identify a specific challenge that your school is encountering and how to tackle that in order to improve your instructional outcomes. It is creating a framework so that way you can really strategically think about what is the biggest point of tension that we have at our school. How can we leverage? What's the biggest leverage point that we have at our school so that way we can grow with exponential results? And so I'll help you in this masterclass figure out how to create a framework for your school so that way you can reach those better results and then ultimately improving student outcomes for your entire school. So you don't want to miss out on that. In order to be in on that masterclass, you'll need to sign up at brandonghouse.com/masterclass. So those are 2 free gifts for you just to say thank you for being a school leader during one of the hardest times there is to be a school leader in the middle of a pandemic, rounding out the end of a school year, getting ready for testing. These are all my ways to say thank you to you. I know what it's like being a school leader myself. We are all dealing with a lot of challenges right now, and this is hopefully some way that'll help you just alleviate some of those challenges. And speaking of challenges, today's episode is a little bit about how to encounter and overcome some challenges that you may face as a school leader. I have this sort of embarrassing but slightly hilarious story about some terrible meetings that I've led. I want you to pause for a second and just think to yourself, have you ever been in a terrible meeting? Have you ever led a terrible meeting? What was the results? What were the results? What happened? For me, there's one particular situation where I remember I had this brilliant idea that we were going to do this massive literacy push throughout our entire school. Honestly, I kind of stole the idea from another principal, not really understanding all the ins and outs of what this principal was doing at her school. I thought it'd be a great idea. Everybody is going to learn about how to be a better literacy teacher, including our PE teachers, including our Spanish teachers, including everybody was going to learn how to be a better literacy teacher. Great idea, right? In theory, I thought it was a fantastic idea. But what turned out to be the meeting was everybody was mandated to come to this meeting. They were mandated to come and sit down and listen to the newest practices around literacy and the greatest research around the reading rope and literacy and phonics and all of these things. And I just thought it was going to be phenomenal. And I'll never forget, I had other school leaders come that were in my office. We were planning around this. We had all these great ideas, and they were all going to take turns sharing a component of this professional development. And we got up to share, and I was fired up, ready to go. I told everybody about it, and I said, we're gonna jump into this. This is gonna be a great PD session. And crickets. Literally, there was more like confusion on people's faces. They didn't really know what to say or do, but because I was the school leader, the head of the school, there were virtually no complaints, at least not yet. You see, I did my portion. I thought I killed it. I crushed it. I'm feeling good, but I could see and I could read the room that this was not landing the way that I wanted it to land. And then I started to think about, I started to watch the other school leaders lead, and I realized that this was an epic failure. At one point, one of our teachers says, "Okay," and literally gets up in the middle of the meeting, packs up all of his stuff, and leaves. I thought he left to go home, but after the meeting was over, it's probably 5 o'clock. We had a short meeting after school from 4 to 5. It's probably 5 o'clock, and I see him in his room writing lesson plans. He would much rather write lesson plans instead of listening to me teach about literacy. That's how terrible this meeting was. It was horrible. I had another situation very similar. It wasn't with me per se, but at one point I was overseeing some principals, and I remember sitting in on a professional development that a principal led. And as I walked in, I could see that almost nobody was listening. The principal was standing up. They were telling about some data, and they were really trying to get people engaged and involved. And as I scanned the room, observing the principal and observing the room that she was leading, there was one teacher who had her sewing kit, her knitting kit, and she was quilting a blanket while the principal was sharing all of this information about the data. Meanwhile, across the room, there's a younger teacher who has her cell phone out, and she's literally doing some duck lips into her camera, taking selfies as the principal was leading. Was this a blatant sign of disrespect among the teachers? Possibly, but I found it to be more of a challenge and something that we had to fix up with our principals, including myself. And so in today's episode, what I want to try to do with you is really help you think about how you communicate with your teachers and what you should be communicating with your teachers and when you should be communicating with them. And so I like to think about this in form of different types of meetings and communication. I once read a book by one of my favorite authors, Patrick Lencioni, and he wrote a book called Death by Meeting. And the reason why I was intrigued by this book was because I am one of those people that sits in meetings and within 2 seconds of you sharing a little bit about what you're going to talk about, I've already figured out what you're going to say. And I'm completely blanked out. I probably am drawing something or I'm thinking about something else. I'm off in a whole different zone and I'm not even listening to what you have to say. And so I picked up this book just to figure out, this is pretty intriguing. I feel like I'm in a meeting and I'm dying. And so I need to figure out how I can get out of these meetings all the time. As a school leader, you have so many meetings. I remember at one point in time, I had so many meetings. I had back-to-back meetings for an entire, not 8-hour day, but from the beginning before school started to the end of school, after school ended, after all of the athletic events ended, I was still in a meeting. That's how many meetings school leaders have. And so I understand that you have over and over redundant meetings, planning meetings, parent meetings, stakeholder meetings, whatever it might be. You have a ton of meetings, and then you can get into this rut of thinking about meetings in the same way. Well, we're just going to stand up. I'm just going to read the agenda. I'm just going to give them a few housekeeping items. I'm just going to tell them that they need to do this and this and this, and then go from there. But really, that is not very effective. One of the quotes that Patrick Lencioni says in his book is, "The hard truth is that bad meetings almost always lead to bad decisions, which is the best recipe for mediocrity." Now think about that. We say this all the time on the EOP podcast. The principal's number one responsibility is to improve teaching and learning. As an instructional leader, my goal is to help you become a better instructional leader so you can improve your student outcomes. The way we do that is by improving teaching and learning. But think about this. If you're leading a bad meeting, that means that your teachers are not making better decisions. They're probably still making poor decisions, or they're probably not changing an action that you would like to see changed. In which case, that just means you're going to stay on the level of mediocrity. You're not improving anything. So as school leaders and people who lead these professional developments and communicate with their staff in so many different ways, we have to be really intentional about how we lead meetings. And so there are different types of meetings, and some of them come in the form of communication, but there are different types of meetings that I'd like to share with you that I want you to use, and hopefully it'll be effective for you. So let's just jump right into it. The first type of meeting that I think is really effective, used the right way, are morning meetings. I used to call them morning huddles. And so at one point in time, I led a school where we had just briefly, we ended up not using it as much just because we found other ways to communicate this, but I've seen other schools do this really well, where before every school day, they call a quick 5-minute huddle. And in this 5-minute huddle, there are 3 really main goals that you have for a morning 5-minute huddle. The first thing is you want it to be very motivating, energetic, high energy, getting everybody pumped up, ready to go. So if you have a school chant, or if you have a school slogan or mantra that you use for your school, maybe you might start off with that. Maybe you start off with a little hand clap or a handshake, or there's some sort of ritual that you do for your school. I walked into one school where they started every morning huddle with a little dance. I know it sounds a little crazy, but what it does is it just kind of gets the jitters out, gets the blood flowing a little bit, and now the teachers are just a percentage better and ready for the rest of the day. So first thing is that it's motivating. The second thing is that you give just small reminders. So as the principal, you may say, hey team, just a reminder today, we are on schedule A, our modified schedule, because we have a shortened school day. Just wanted to remind everybody, if you have any questions about the lunch schedule, make sure that you email whoever before this time, so that way we can get the lunches to the appropriate location. Very quick, very easy, nothing too significant. This is not an opportunity to do any browbeating or shaming. This is not the time when you want to do any of that. Not that you want to do that anyway as a school leader. You will have to correct people, but this is definitely not the time to do any correction. But instead, the last thing is that this is a time for you to celebrate. So you can shout out somebody and say, hey, I just wanted to shout out Miss Such and Such today. Just as I was pulling into the parking lot, I noticed that she picked up a little bit of trash that was out in front of our school just to keep it clean. This is a great example of one of our school values, which is pride, and she has shown some pride in our school today. So I just wanted to say thank you to her. Let's give her a quick shout out or chant or dance or whatever it might be. So morning huddles, very energetic, very engaging, just to get the blood flowing. Then the second meeting or type of communication is really around email. And I want you to think about email in two different ways. There are all staff emails, and then there are personal emails. So let's go with all staff emails first. The first thing you want to think about with all staff emails is that these are really about getting out as much information as possible. So you always hear in staff meetings where the principal says, but first, a few housekeeping items. Well, this is an opportunity to take out the housekeeping items and put them in a consolidated, centralized location. So that way you don't have to waste people's time in a staff meeting or in a professional development. They already have access to the information. They can refer back to it at any time. So you want to make sure that this all staff email is very action oriented, getting out as much information as possible. This doesn't need to be a whole lot of fluff. You can just say, don't forget, turn in this at this time. Don't forget that we need to see these people at this room at this time. We also have, as a reminder, we have a parent meeting night tonight. All staff is expected to attend. Keep it short and sweet. When you add too many words, when you add too much fluff to those emails, your teachers tend to not read that. Now, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of teachers reading it in general anyway, but you could at least save your time and energy by saying, on December 25th, well, that's Christmas, on November 18th, I sent out this email. Please refer back to it before attending today's staff meeting. So that way people can be prepared for whatever you're going to talk about. Now, shifting from all staff emails, one caveat before I jump into personal emails. All staff emails, one thing that an all staff email should not be is an entire school shaming. Once again, your number one goal as a school leader is to improve teaching and learning. And if you take a public, very public opportunity to shame somebody, you're probably going to lose credibility. You're probably going to crash and tank morale because you're taking that time to send out a mass email and saying, oh, by the way, don't do X, Y, and Z. That may not necessarily be the time to do that. If you do spend the time in an email to say we shouldn't do this and this is why, and people are curious about what's going on, you may want to spend some time explaining your core values first, or explaining your mission and your vision, so that people can connect to the purpose behind a reprimand like that publicly. I myself have been a person who has done something like that, and it's not beneficial. It only hurts and doesn't help. So if you can, at any cost, please avoid sending out a public shaming to your staff. Now let's move on to personal emails. Personal emails are really about setting them up for a personal conversation. This is not a really long diatribe about something that you saw, unless you want to have this documented for record keeping. So with personal email, I like to just keep it short and sweet. Miss Johnson, I loved the way that you did X, Y, and Z today. Please, I look forward to meeting you on Friday so we can talk further about what I observed in your class. Or if it is where you have to have a personal one-on-one feedback session to correct a behavior or correct something that was said or done, or something that wasn't said or done, then you could also just keep it very brief. Ms. Johnson, I observed some things today. I'd like to see you today at 5:00 so we can discuss whatever that thing is. It's very important that when you have those personal type of emails, instead of saying, just come see me in my office, that creates a lot of anxiety. It distracts teachers from trying to teach. Instead, they're worried about this thing, where when you provide a little bit of clarity, when you can say, Ms. Johnson, I observed the way that you communicated with the student. I wanted to just meet with you briefly for 5 minutes during your planning period. That at least gives them a little bit more peace of mind to say, I at least know what I'm talking about. I don't have to pack my bags right now. I don't have to get ready to walk out the door here because something's going on. I'm at least prepared for some sort of conversation. The other reason why you might use personal email as a meeting is, like I said before, record keeping. If you do have teachers that may be borderline ineffective, there may be teachers that have done a behavior that you don't condone, or you just have done observations and feedback. This may be that time where you can just document that and say, this is for your records.